Judy, are you there?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, we're doing roll call.
Yes.
Kathleen?
Kathleen Goodwin Hebron.
Jess?
Jessica Dapsis Hebron.
Sue?
Sue Stolfi Marlboro.
Vin?
Vin Colonna Hebron.
Jess? Sorry, I got Jess twice. Mary?
Mary Kochevsky, Marlboro.
Rob?
Rob Shuttle Hebron.
Is there any board member that I've forgotten or haven't seen yet?
Lori Blake, Andover.
Oh, hi, Lori. I'm Stephanie Bancroft from Andover. Student rep?
Dana Shimoleski, Marlboro.
And Lily Shevchenko, Andover.
Thank you.
Hi,
Administration.
Stephanie. This is Jean. Did you get me, Jean Wilson, Marlboro?
I got you now. Hi, Jean.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Administration, Scott?
Scott Leslie, Acting Superintendent.
Mike?
Michael Cerusi, Principal RHAM Middle School.
Penny?
Penny Briscoe, Interim Principal, RHAM High School.
Kristen Small. I think I saw her.
Yeah, Kristen Small, Supervisor of Pupil Services.
Chris Mater?
Chris Mater, Assistant Principal, RHAM High School.
Carrie Ann?
Carrie Ann Bell, Assistant Principal, RHAM Middle School.
Dan?
Dan Trudeau, Athletic Director.
All right. Any other administration here that I haven't seen?
Christine Hartwig, Director of Pupil Services.
I was looking for you. Thank you. And Karen? Board Clerk? Karen DiColetto, I believe you're here.
Yeah,
She's on
sorry.
She's on, okay. All right. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
Tressa Giordano, I just jumped on.
Oh, hi, Chessa.
Hi.
Welcome. Okay, let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number 3 is public comments. Hebron, Andover, and Marlboro community engagement and attendance at Board of Ed public meetings is welcomed. The public comment segment of the meeting agenda is set aside so the Board of Ed may receive public comments. Procedurally, public remarks will be limited to 3 minutes and citizens will be asked to identify themselves. Because the Board of Education is limited by the Freedom of Information Act to discuss only matters on the agenda, the Board of Ed is not permitted to engage in a discussion of the comments presented. Are there any public comments at this time? I know Vin said he had one. Go ahead, Vin.
Yes, Vin Colonna, 45 Centerbrook Drive in Hebron. And I'd just like to say a big thanks to the administration and the teachers, especially for the team effort that they put together during this time. Also, the janitorial staff and the students for really taking care of themselves and being careful with each other in an effort to get us back into school full time. I think it's a great credit to our community and to all those that are involved in this. And I think the cold weather might have helped a little bit, keeping those outdoor gatherings to a minimum. So that's a good thing. And with the vaccine continue to roll out, I hope that we can continue to be safe. And another shout out to Dan Trudeau and the athletic department for getting some spectators into some winter games coming up. So thank you to them. And I'm sure the crowd will be excited to get back in the gym.
Thank you, Vin. Are there any other public comments? Judy, go ahead.
Yeah,
Stephanie, I want to thank you and Scott for getting this meeting together so quickly after we requested it last week and after the board meeting. And we greatly appreciate that you're being so responsive to the community.
Thank you, Judy. Any other public comments? If you're on the phone, you can just speak up if we can't see a raised hand. Okay, I'm not hearing any at this time, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4, review of RAM full reopening plan. Go ahead,
Okay.
Scott.
Thank you, Stephanie. We actually have a number of things we'd love to share this evening. One is a kind of bring everyone up to speed of where we are with our full reopening plan. And then Teresa introduced herself a few minutes ago. I'm very thankful to have Teresa Giordano, the Executive Director for RHAM, who along with Dr. Cerusi and Dr. Briscoe will be talking about some of the SEL programming we're putting together and running jointly with AHM for our students and our families. You know, it's almost been a year. March 13th, Friday, March 13th last year was our last full year in school before we left for what I anticipated was going to be a 2-week break in the school year, and of course ended up being a break for the rest of the school year, until we were able to once again connect with our seniors during last year's graduation. And of course, this year has been a very different year for all of us. So I can't tell you how grateful I am that we're able to begin talking about having the opportunity to bring everybody back in the building. And we met with our staff this afternoon and shared the news that our plan right now is to bring all of our students back for a full reopening on Monday, March 29th. And we shared that information with our families following that meeting this afternoon. And I know that there may be some folks asking, you know, why can't we speed that process up? And I'm sure there are some folks who are going to be suggesting that we might be moving too quickly, that, you know, maybe that this thing isn't really over and we should be careful. What we're basing that decision on is the fact that from the very beginning of this process, you know, we knew we had to put our faith somewhere in someone, because even at the beginning there was a lot of contradictory information, and even today we still get all sorts of contradictory information. Hard to really know what's what. But I have to say that the advice and the wisdom that we've received from the Chatham Health District really has been instrumental in allowing us, I think, to so effectively manage our hybrid model and in keeping our students safe and keeping our staff safe. And so when the representatives from Chatham Health, along with the state, you know, said it's time. There really is not a reason anymore not to make the move into full return. We really felt like, okay, we had passed a milestone, and we know that so many of our students are struggling with the challenge of isolation, the challenge of just being far too tired to be looking at a screen for one more minute. And so if we could safely reach that benchmark and bring our students back in, we really felt obligated to do so. And we do believe that we're at a point where we can do it safely. We can support our students. When we shared the information with our families, we did include a survey. We'd like to know from our families how many may choose to keep students remote or even go remote if they're in the building. And I recognize that, you know, for a lot of us, this is going to be a challenge. What we're hoping is that regardless of the number of students that return for us, over the course of this spring, we'll be able to get as many of our students back into the building as possible. And our goal is to show everybody that we can do it safely, and that we can kind of get back to some normalcy in our lives in terms of what school should look like. Obviously, we still have challenges. There's still a pandemic. The wonderful news is that vaccines are moving quickly. Right now, RHAM will be hosting a vaccine clinic. We're scheduled for March 19th, and we'll be hosting both Hebron Elementary Schools and RHAM. And then April 16th will be the second vaccinations for Hebron and RHAM. Marlborough will be paired up, or is paired up, with Colchester. And then within the Chatham Health District, Portland and East Hampton are paired up together. Andover is in Eastern Hills, so they're working with a different health district, and I actually think they're getting their vaccinations sometime this week. So we know that we have that vaccinations are really upon us, and I'm thrilled that some of our staff members have been able to schedule vaccination appointments through other means other than just the clinics that we'll be offering. But our numbers are down as well. Obviously, I think we've all seen the positivity rate has been down within our community. Doesn't mean that it's disappeared. We know that COVID is still with us. But if we look at the numbers within the high school and the middle school, they have dropped significantly. We have not done any contact tracing for, it's been quite a few weeks since we've had to do that. So we're seeing concrete evidence within our building that our mitigation efforts are successful. And in particular, wearing of masks, the physical distancing we're able to do, the focus on sanitizing and keeping our building safe. We're very fortunate to have state-of-the-art, well, maybe not state-of-the-art, but we have up-to-date air handling units that are able to use the state-of-the-art filters that allow us to ensure that the air is clean and the filters that we're using are able to filter out COVID particles. So we have all of the pieces in place, I think, to successfully bring our students back into the building. Doesn't mean we, excuse me, it doesn't mean we don't still have some planning to do. Obviously, bringing 1,000 students back into one building, the high school, as opposed to half of those numbers, is going to require us to retool some of our arrival practices in the morning, how we're spacing students out through the building. We still need to pay very close attention to ensuring that we can physically distance as much as possible. So we're going to be taking these next few weeks to survey our families, get a better idea of who'll be remote, who'll be in the building. We may be moving some classes around so that we can move some classes that might have a heavier load of students into larger spaces. We're going to have to refine and retool how we manage lunch so that we continue to provide students with the opportunity to eat lunch with smaller groups. We're going to have to ensure that we have all the staff that we need to move forward. We may have some staff that won't be able to return due to various conditions. So we need to make sure that we can get people in those classrooms. So we have some work to do, but I'm confident that we'll be able to make it happen. We'll be able to bring our students back safely, and we'll be able to, I think, show everybody that our students will be safe back in the building. Our staff will be safe back in the building with our students back in the building, and we can hopefully get our students and staff back to a more of a sense of normalcy as we finish out this year. So our goal is to get as many people back as possible, and our goal for those folks that don't come back is to provide them with the opportunity to continue to learn remotely. But our hope too is that we'll be able to encourage more and more of our students to re-enter the building. We can do it safely. I had a conversation with one of the representatives from the Hebron Lions today. We're working on getting the picnic tables back. I'm hoping that we may have those back prior to the March 29th return date. So we have a lot happening there. I know one of the questions, not just one of the questions, a lot of the questions we've been asked for good reason are from our current parents and our seniors wondering what might the end of the year look like. I wish I wish my crystal ball was a little clearer on this one. The last time we asked the State Department of Health representatives what we should be expecting for graduation, this was a couple of weeks ago. We were told we should probably be thinking about what things looked like last year. Having said that, I just got notification on my phone that the governor may be relaxing some additional gathering limitations. So, you know, we're constantly focused on what can we do safely, what are we going to be allowed to do. So I know there's a lot of senior parents out there. I know there are a lot of our seniors wondering what that's going to look like. We certainly will have a graduation ceremony. What exactly that will look like, it's a bit hard to tell right now. I know we have different groups who are looking at some alternatives for proms, whether they be outside events. I know our senior class is looking at their senior outing. So we are looking at all of those events, and our goal will be to host something that is going to, you know, be for all of our senior students. But again, we're kind of working on what exactly those details will look like. And I think the final answer is going to be ultimately dependent on what we're able to do. But, you know, I think last year showed us that with some creativity, we're able to come up with some pretty incredible programming. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to make something great happen for our seniors. So we have a lot of work to do, and, you know, we'll be contacting and communicating with our families on a weekly basis, keeping everybody updated. But right now, you know, we were able to modify our current, well, last week's schedule of Wednesdays being hybrid. This week is the first week where we'll be bringing one of our groups in 3 days a week as opposed to just the 2 days a week. And I think that that gives us a really nice transition into March 29th, when we'll be able to welcome all of our students back into the building. So a lot more information to come, but I'm hopeful that there's light at that end of the tunnel, and I can't wait to get there. So I'm happy, Stephanie, to answer any questions from board members. Or
Steph, this is Jess.
Hi, Jess.
Hi there. I just had a few questions for, I know there's been some flexibility with students now. Some, like Evan, will go in one day but not go in another. Is there still going to be that type of flexibility once they return back full time?
That's a great question. Thank you. So a lot of those details, Jessica, we're going to be obviously, you know, putting out in various, as we update really our reentry plan. So we will be putting a lot of that information together. Right now, our thinking is that we're really going to be asking students to choose to be back the full 5 days, as opposed to doing it one day and being out on, you know, one day. We find it's difficult for teachers to plan, particularly as we start to move into more hands-on activities and we're able to do more with our students. So we will be asking our students to commit to, you know, returning for the full 5 day a week schedule.
Right. And I had one other question just regarding staffing for teachers. With the second vaccine not happening until April 16th, I'm just wondering what flexibility teachers have legally, and also with the school. Some of them, if they do have health issues, might not feel comfortable coming until they get the second vaccine. So are there some adjustments being made for some of those things?
We're working individually with that, our staff members that are in those circumstances. Yeah.
Any other questions? Judy, is your hand up?
That's
I see
me.
Vin. Go ahead, Vin.
Scott, just a question on the block schedule versus the 8-period schedule? And also, can you speak about the, will we have the picnic tables back outside from the Lions like we did last year? Being able to utilize the outside, area for lunch and or classes?
Yep. So
March 29th, the weather should be getting better by then, hopefully.
absolutely. So I spoke with a representative from the Lions today. Actually, when we returned the picnic tables, the Lions were incredibly generous and made sure we knew that they'd be available for us again this spring. So I spoke to their representative. They're the council's going to kind of confirm that for us. And my hope is that we'll have those back on site prior to March 29th so that, as the weather improves, we'll be able to start using those immediately. The issue with the block schedule, the block schedule, the reason why we put it into place in the fall was that we needed to do a number of things. One, we needed to reduce the number of transitions between classes. And anyone that's been in RHAM knows that although we've got a beautiful building and it's a great size, our hallways, it's a high school and it's a middle school, and our hallways get crowded. And we really needed to do what we could to reduce the number of those transitions of students switching from one class to another. The other piece that is unique about RHAM's schedule is that whereas most high schools schedule a lunch kind of that in one period out of the day, so students have a 20-minute lunch and you have some flexibility there. A few years ago, when we went to the 8-period day, we began to schedule each of our students for a full 45-minute lunch. And at the time, moving to an 8-period day, what that allowed students to do is that if a student wanted to take an extra course, they had that extra period where they were able to do that. It provided students with a 45-minute break in their day to get extra help from their teachers, to eat a more relaxed lunch than trying to have to, get it down in 20 minutes, allowed them to complete homework. For our teachers, it provided them with a collaboration period. And so it really was win-win for the entire community. The challenge that it presents to us during a pandemic is that we have upwards to 400 students in, one area that we have to manage. So the block schedule, the way we kind of offset each of the periods, it provides our upperclassmen who have a lunch. Now they have a lunch either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. It allows them to arrive late or leave early. And it had a significant impact in allowing us to reduce crowding in the building. And that was during our hybrid when we had half the students. Now that we have everyone coming back, that's even going to be more important. So those things that we put into place in the fall become more important now. One of the things that it leads to is the fact that we do have an earlier release, so we're getting out about an hour earlier than we normally would. And the reason for that is for our staff. If on day one we're periods 1, 2, 3, and 5, and your preparation period, your lunch period is period 6 and 7, every other day you don't have the preparation period, lunch period that we're obligated to make sure that we provide. In reaching out to other schools, I meet with all the schools within our area, East Hampton and Colchester, once a week. I meet with all the schools and the superintendents in the eastern part of the state once a week. And then each of our principals works with a regular group of schools. And what we found is that for smaller schools, it's less of a problem because they have fewer kids anyway. And so they're not finding the problem of trying to manage large groups of students. Whereas the schools that are the size of RHAM and larger, we're finding that many of them are dismissing. Some are dismissing as early as noon and not providing a lunch. They're simply, giving the kids a lunch as they move out. So, our block schedule, it will be even more important for us to be following those mitigation efforts of social distancing, wearing masks, and those sorts of things. So the block schedule continues to be a significant mechanism for us to ensure that we're distancing and keeping our kids safe. We have the earlier release than normal to ensure that we're able to provide everything we're obligated to by contract. And again, we're finding that it pretty much is the norm for most of the bigger high schools that are trying to manage all these challenges. One of the things that, and I know this isn't necessarily huge, but one of the things that we are going to do is manage the early releases. So for example, we have an early release scheduled for, I think it's March 12th. We're going to eliminate some of those early releases so that there's a little less time taken away from the day. We may need to add a couple of other early releases as we coordinate our bus schedules with the elementary schools. But we are going to do what we can to manage time, and so we can get as much as we possibly can. But yeah, the block scheduling I know is a challenge for a lot of us. But again, it allows us to manage the movement of students in the building and the crowdness. We tried one Wednesday to bring our students in on I think it was our A group of students in on a Wednesday where we ran a straight 8-period day. And we just found that the hallways were far too crowded. We had spaces in the building that we just, really couldn't manage because of the numbers. And again, that was under the hybrid model. So, we look to our block schedule to continue to allow this. I can say that, a lot of schools that have gone to the block this year have chosen to continue it into next year. We are not doing that. We're going to welcome back the 8-period day in the fall. So.
What about last year when you went to the hybrid? Were you in the block schedule with the utilizing outdoors as well, or was it 8-period?
Well, remember, Vinny, last year we were out totally. We never came back.
Okay.
We left in March and we never re-entered the building. I think did we go into hybrid, Penny? No, we did. We kept our regular schedule last year. The hybrid we introduced, Vinny, at the beginning of this year in the fall. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that would help to, in getting some student input. I know the block schedule, the classes are a lot longer. And obviously they've had to put up with it and dealing with it. But be interesting to get their feedback on that as well. And again, if we could utilize outdoors more and keep them separate that way, I think it might be good. Thank you.
Yep.
I cannot see all of the board members, so you'll have to speak up if you want to ask a question, or you could put something in the chat. I did see Dana with the hand up.
I have a few questions. Ms. Dabbs has briefly touched on it. Would students be able to do a virtual day if they were like calling out sick and it was like a rare occasion? Like on that end, would they be able to do that still?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And also, assuming we're going back in full, I know one of the big issues with clubs meeting in person was crossing the sides of the alphabet. I don't see any reason not to have clubs in person at this point. So is that something we will be doing?
Right. Yep.
It is?
Yep. So
All right.
we will, not only do we have our athletics back in place, but certainly clubs will also, I know we've started it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will continue with that. And obviously with everything, we'll be looking at each one and, we'll be asking each club to do whatever, everything they can to ensure, mask wearing and the proper distancing and all that good stuff. But absolutely. Yeah.
All right. That's what
we're
I like to
hoping
hear.
to give the students, the full experience once we're back.
And then I know Mr. Colonna just brought it up. I just want to give my stance on it. I think there's a lot of students who would really actually suffer from going back to an 8-period schedule, mainly because of the way workload would work. The way it is right now, we have classes on a Monday and we don't have them again until a Wednesday. So we have more time to actually get the work done and it's more spaced out. And I think, if I'm correct, the initial purpose of this meeting was to talk about students' social and emotional learning with mental health kind of tied into it. I don't think there's any plan to really go back to the 8-day period, but just for any parents or anyone else who want to hear that, I do think there's a lot of students who would really struggle going back to having an entire workload at once, especially because we are still in the midst of a pandemic. And then the last thing I want to touch on is I think we'd also really benefit from publicizing these meetings more to students. I know a lot of what we're talking about is something a lot of students would want to hear. I've had a lot of people come ask me questions that I know we fully address in these meetings or the other reopening meetings. So maybe just a thought to send out an email to students about these, because I think we would find a lot more people actually showing up. I know at our regular board meetings, as of recently, there's been around 60-ish people. I think we'd get a lot more input and public comments from students, especially if we did kind of publicize and advertise them a little bit more. So that's all I have for today.
Great. Thanks, Dana.
Just a follow up for Dana, can you talk about the 110-minute class, and do you find there's any disadvantages to staying engaged for the whole 110 minutes?
I don't think either of them is a win situation. Quite honestly, they both have their serious downsides. I've never really had a problem focusing until this year. I've definitely noticed it getting worse and worse because of this schooling year. I try and read a book for a class and I have to use an audiobook to keep myself focused. And a lot of it does come from being online. When I'm in person, I focus a lot better and the classes don't feel as long. I'm in a psych class with your daughter, and it's a 70-minute class and we sit there taking notes the whole time. But the way the teacher works, we have little 2-minute conversations throughout a class of notes. So it doesn't feel as bad. But we're in the class, so we're engaged in those conversations. On Thursdays and Fridays when I'm at home and the class in person is having those little chats, I'm sitting on my phone. I will admit that to you guys. I'm sitting on my phone or I'm Googling something else. So I think the 70-minute periods aren't that bad when we're actually in person, but for the students who are fully online, it's definitely not the best, but also going to an 8-day period wouldn't be the best for them either, I don't think. So both of them are kind of not ideal situations. Ideally, everything would be normal, but I do think the 8-day period has more downsides than the 70-minute period.
And I think that, I think I speak for a lot of schools that have gone to a block schedule this year where, typically if RHAM was going to go to a block schedule, we would take years to debate and to think and to talk about it and get input. We went in a few days, from an 8 period to a block schedule. And I don't think, so I know RHAM's not alone in having made that shift. As I said, I think a lot of districts are thinking, well, let's just keep moving forward with it and let's just keep it. I think it would be a mistake to take this time in history to decide we're going to make that change, because, as Dana, I think as you're pointing out, the block schedule feels so different whether you're experiencing remotely or you're actually in person. And even those of us that are in person aren't really in person all the time. So it's really hard to figure out. So I think that these will be conversations that we'll have over the next few years. I wouldn't be surprised if students and staff talk about block scheduling in terms of maybe that's something we should think about. Not a decision you make during a pandemic, but once we're out of it and back to normal, I think that those certainly will be discussions that will probably continue on. But yeah, I agree with you, Dana. There are upsides and downsides to each model, and probably not the best time right now to make a final decision on what things should look like. So we do look forward to bringing back the 8-period day next year.
Did I see Lily with her hand up?
Yeah. You sort of already touched on it, but I agree with some aspects of Dana's ideas, but I also disagree at the same time. I think that it definitely would be best if we stick with an 8-period day, but if we're having this same workload, it's not going to work out. Because honestly, I go home, or not even, I stay home every day or most days, and I'm doing homework till late at night. And I don't think that is how it should be. And if we're going back to 8 classes a day, I'm going to be doing homework till much later. And that is not going to work, because I am an athlete, I work, and as much as school is important, it can't like take over my life like that. However, I think the 8-period day is much more daunting, like as we're thinking about it now, than it would actually be when we get in there. Like Dana said, the like 70-minute periods are a lot better when you're in school. And I think that would be the same with the 8-period day. As much as we think like, oh my God, 8 periods, 8 classes, we're going to be at school from 7:25 to 2:10 or however long it is, we're going to be in school seeing our friends doing that. So I do think it's wise that we stick with the 8-period day. And, you know, who knows, maybe years after I graduate, we'd move to block scheduling.
Well, Lily, you'll have a voice on the board, so you'll have that voice to share.
And I do just want to clarify, I don't think we should be doing a block schedule after this year in any sense. Just want to make that fully clear. I like the 8-day period, quite like the 8-period day quite a lot, but for next year, if I was still in school next year, I would not enjoy that. So I just wanted to put that thought out there as well.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm not hearing any other questions from board members. Go ahead, Scott.
So maybe we can talk about some of the social emotional programming that I know Dana and Lily spoke so eloquently about during some of our previous meetings. And I'm going to ask Dr. Briscoe and Dr. Cerruti and Teresa Giordano to talk about some of the programs that we have in place, and then hopefully get some board discussion in terms of some of the things we've been doing and some of the things we have in the planning stages. And again, for anyone that doesn't know Tressa, she's the executive director of HM and
Scott,
a real nice partner with us.
Scott, this is Judy. May I just request something? Okay, so I've talked to a number of people, and I think another board member who's not on tonight, and we are especially interested in how you are threading the needle and making sure, or supporting our kids to be healthy emotionally, socially, but also making sure that they're prepared for college, because it's still very rigorous right now in college. So if you could speak to that. And actually, I think when we initially set up this meeting, we spoke about that too, you know, and I know nobody has ever suggested watering anything down, but how we kind of balance the two. I know, you know, Dr. Brisgel, you have a pretty extensive background in that. So, and Tress, I think you do as well. So if you could speak to that, please.
Sure. Dr. Cerruti, do you want to start with the middle school and talk about some of the program we have in place?
So some of the things that we have in place, well, let me back up. Some of the things that we've had in place previously, and we continue to have in place going forward, is our counselors are checking in with our students every 2 weeks. They sort of take the pulse of the school. They'll send out a survey to students, to all students, with a couple of questions about, you know, how are you doing? What are you finding interesting? Just trying to be a little more personal for students. And they do respond back to the counselors and give them a slew of stuff, as middle schoolers do. They do like to type, and they do like to talk. And so they'll talk and chat at the same time. It's a wonderful thing. We continue to do our weekly core meetings with our counselors and our school social workers and support staff. We do discuss our at-risk kids, both the ones that are remote and both the ones that are in school. Obviously, you heard last time we brought some of our at-risk kids in school 5 days a week. I can tell you that that has helped immensely. The kids are happy to be there. And even though it's kind of weird to be there, some kids called it like a weird Wednesday. The special attention they got made them feel very special, and it really worked out. And I think going back full time will have a benefit for them as well. We continue to use our paraprofessional support in all areas, trying to support the kids both in school and remotely, just keeping organized. And these are not associated with special education. These are paraprofessionals working with some of our regular education students that need that boost in terms of organization, and sometimes just SEL support, social emotional support. I know Tressa will talk about the AHM workshop she did about students and about staff in a bit, so I won't get into that. We continue, or I should say, we put together the Raptor Report. Some of you get the middle school Raptor Report weekly. It's our newsletter. We tried to format it. We try to put little tidbits in there. At one point, we put in some suggestions of what you can do at home to help your child if they're struggling. And also, we always tell people, just please call us. As has been mentioned, the teacher goal this year is around social emotional learning. And I can tell you, in terms of the middle school staff, I'm sure it's true at the high school, they've taken this really to heart. I have had many conversations with staff for their own social emotional support. We have discussions ourselves about what's going on teams, but also what's going on personally with them. So I have an understanding of where people are and what they're bringing every day to school. And I do have to say, I mean, I know we've complimented the staff before, but the idea of making something look easy, like teaching a class when you have students who are remote and in front of you, is quite a challenge. You know, I've worked in block schedules before where teachers were prepped for a whole year for that schedule change. To do it on March 13th last year and say, okay, this year you're doing it, was a challenge. And the support, the social emotional support the administration has had to give to our staff has been enormous as well, along with the students. 70 minutes is a long time. And for any of our kids and for any of our staff too, to adjust to the moment. So we have been making connections that way. Many of our goals around social emotional, some are as simple as, I'm going to get to know about 5 or 6 of our at-risk kids and see if I can't pull them in. And, you know, I'm happy to say I meet with my staff, some of my teachers about every 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, and we talk about how they're doing and how they're doing with their students. And it's a wonderful thing that they can report different types of relationships that they now have with the kids. We continue to reach out to families of our at-risk students and even some of our regular students to offer support. We do offer ideas on how they can support their kids at home and in school. And so overall, there's lots of little things going on and lots of pieces. And every day has been sort of a challenge. We go home tired, all of us. I think the kids as well. But I also think we go home a little very satisfied with what's going on for the kids. In terms of academics, I know Dr. Benson Clark mentioned, she asked about that at the high school. At the middle school level, we're looking at the skills and what are critical skills kids will need for next year. And we're looking at where they are right now. We're going to look at where they are at the end of the year. And we're going to basically, we're 7-12. So the departments will talk about those skills and what needs to be picked up with, say, 9th grade, 8th to 9th. So we're going to meet the kids where they are. We're going to move them up gradually. We know there are going to be gaps. There's no question. But we are working together curriculum-wise and instructionally to make sure that we have a good understanding where the kids are so we can meet their needs that way. And I'll stop there.
I think that was very helpful. I'm sure other people do too. What Dana and Lily said, how do we make sure that parents can reach out to all of you, or that they know that.
So the weekly newsletter we put out encourages parents to communicate back to us. We have an open door policy. Any parent that emails us, we try to respond quickly or within 24 hours, just so that they understand, or not they understand, so they get an answer to their question. If we don't have an answer, we're honest about the fact that we just don't have the answer for them. So I think that's been our primary means of communication. Teams as well at the middle school have put out their own letters, monthly letters or weekly notices to parents as well to keep them informed about what's going on team. So we're trying as much communication as possible that we can get out there to parents and students.
And that's something that we can all do too, right? As board members, and Lily and Dana as student representatives, we can encourage people to make those phone calls and emails.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Briscoe, do you want to cover the high school?
Sure. So, you're going to hear a lot of overlap between Dr. Cerusi's and mine, and also Tressa's, because we are working collaboratively, and SEL has been a focus in the district for the past several years. It's not just something that we discovered we need to do during the pandemic. So we have a really good baseline of training for teachers, preparation that we've done over the years, things that teachers already started incorporating into their classes previous to COVID that they continue to utilize. Like I know in classrooms that I've been in, teachers are, playing music when they're able to create an atmosphere in which students can feel like they can, become calmer, sort of wash out some of the problems of the day and get refocused for the class, or just be able to, listen to music while they're working, and, that there's sort of a relaxed atmosphere in the classrooms in terms of that. I know that teachers have worked on breathing exercises and mindfulness activities with students, especially before tests or quizzes, and just trying to be mindful of the things that do stress students out and helping them with coping strategies. We did a lot of work in the past with the Yale ruler training, where we had the implementation of the mood meter, where staff and students can identify their emotions and how that's impacting them during their day, or how it's impacting their learning. And I've also seen a lot this year where teachers are checking in either at the beginning or end of class, usually at the beginning, just trying to see where people are, how they're feeling that day, what might be distracting them. And so teachers have been really mindful of the challenges that students are having, particularly this school year, but even before the school year, just, their everyday challenges. It's hard to go over everything, but I'll highlight some of the things that you haven't already heard from Dr. Cerusi, because we share the core and SRBI meetings where we discuss students who are struggling with counselors and support staff. This year, our counselors are doing extra check-ins with students, trying to call them or email them. And I know Dana's referenced this before, where it was, like they didn't really want to have another meeting with anybody, but just having somebody check in with them would be a nice idea. But, of course, emails sometimes go unanswered. So one of the ideas that a counselor came up with that we've decided we wanted to do this year, and the students don't know this yet, so Dana and don't ruin it for us. It's going to be a surprise. We have artwork that we've compiled, that our art department compiled, and we've created these beautiful postcards that we're having printed up, and we're going to have teachers identify students that they want to send a personalized postcard to check in with them and just let them know that they're being thought of, and that they can reach out at any time. And so every student will get at least one postcard from a staff member. And hopefully that will be happening in the next couple of weeks. We also have a monthly principals advisory meeting, which we've had pre-COVID, but it's, I think, serving a different purpose this year to really help check in with students to see, what their struggles are, what the challenges are. And Dana has attended a lot of those meetings, and I hope that it's offered some opportunity for students to ask questions and talk about the things that are bothering them and suggestions that they've had that we have implemented. I know it's open to every student. Not every student attends, obviously, but it is something that we do try to draw as many students in as possible. Dana sends out an email to every student in the school and invites them in. I follow up by sharing a meeting link and invite them in. I get a lot of questions about it, and students do pop in and out, but we have sort of a good crew that shows up every month, which is great. I found that really helpful for me to kind of stay in touch with what's happening with students and also to get their input. Because of that meeting, and also Dana's work with Activism Club and Activism Club, and what was the other club, Dana, that we met with? Do you remember?
Activism Club and GSA. It was a joint.
GSA. Right. Thank you. They had a lot of great ideas about how we can continue to reach out to students. So one of the ideas was to create a guidance advisory every month so that counselors can meet with students, any student who wants to discuss the things that they're struggling with or questions they have or just information purposes. So that's going to start this month. And I think that's going to be very helpful, especially for counselors to connect with students in a different way. Then also our school counseling staff revamped their website this year that includes a lot more SEL information, a virtual calming room, which we are also, and I know Chessa will probably mention this, creating a Zen room for our staff, an actual Zen room. And they have, an Instagram and online Google appointments so that students can easily sign up to meet with them. So they are very accessible that way. They don't have to go through somebody else. They can just sign up on the Google Calendar to meet with their counselor. Recently, we also had a student compile some mental health resources that she thinks are particularly useful for our students. And she's providing those to us to put in the front office, into our counseling office, and also to put online. This year, back in the fall, we subscribed to what they call a virtual kindness wall, which has afforded the opportunity for staff and students to post comments to each other, encouraging quotes, nice compliments, or thanking somebody, or just, in general, just posting something kind and good so that there's positivity in the air. And so we have that, that's on our website, and you can click on it, and anybody can click on it and see the posts on there that have accumulated over the year. And it's also playing on our TV in the atrium at the high school, and also staff can play it in their classroom on their smart board for students to be able to see, especially during lunch, which is a good time to be able to see some positivity in the day. Our Power of Words group, which normally does a 10th grade bullying, what do you want to call it, seminar, I guess, it's a day that usually in October, November, we have our 10th grade students engage in, but this year, obviously that couldn't happen. So I'm working with that group, and they're focusing their energy, sort of shifting from bullying, which doesn't seem to be quite the hot topic these days, but more to an SEL focus. And we're talking about doing something in the spring that probably will be outside for smaller groups of 10th graders to be able to maybe go to some different stations and activities to engage in some SEL activities. Dana and I met today with another student talking about offering opportunities for our incoming 8th graders to, and Dr. Cerusi doesn't know this yet. I have to have a conversation with him, so spoiler alert. We want to give them an opportunity in the spring, probably late May, to be able to maybe go outside and meet with some of the clubs and activities, some juniors or seniors who are involved with those, to try to engage them in thinking about what they would like to get involved with next year. And we think this is particularly important because as students have been virtual and disengaged and disconnected, we really want to help them thinking about what they can do to have that interaction next year in a much more meaningful way. Because as we know, kids who get involved with activities do much better in school. Let's see, I'm trying to see if I've missed anything. I think that covers the highlights, but we're constantly looking for ways to not only, meet our students' mental health needs, but also our staff mental health needs, because as we know, if our teachers aren't well, then they aren't, the teachers that they need to be for our students. And so it works both ways. I think what some of the comments I've heard from students is that they appreciate that their teachers are aware of this topic and giving them time in the classroom to talk about things or do things that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. But to your point, Judy, I think one of the balancing acts that our teachers have been constantly engaged in this year is how much do I push them so that they are engaged in rigorous academics and still leave RAM with what they need to be successful, with the knowledge that our students are struggling this year, particularly more so than usual, and knowing that they have to sometimes meet those needs before they can push the rigorous academics. And so we've encouraged them to, decide if a day that is just not working and they need to take a break and they need to divert their attention to something else. And I know that teachers have been doing that very successfully and students have responded well to that, but then they know the next day they got to get back into it and push a little harder. And, that ebb and flow just, occurs naturally. Obviously we know that our students going into the next school year will have some, dips in their skills, and we will be addressing those. And there will be a time where that becomes paramount. But right now, I think the focus has been on making sure our students are well and able to access the learning that we do have, and hoping that we do find the balance, but knowing that every day that's a new, it's a ongoing struggle, but one that we're, I think, successfully trying to balance, and we'll continue to do so.
And I guess we won't really know that until the next group is in college or whatever, too, to be fair. So, maybe we will need to offer some more summer intense kinds of things for advanced kids, or I'm not even sure. And the people who I was speaking with, Penny and the board member, we have kids in college and they're fine, but the work is rigorous. So we just want to make, and that is, since I've been on the board, we all know I say this every meeting, I'm the longest serving member on the RAM board right now, that since I've been on the board, our students who are in college have always felt very, very prepared. So, we're really, certainly, I can speak for myself, I'm never saying to, to stress someone out to an inappropriate kind of place, but it would be stressful if someone who is typically a great student went to college and they weren't prepared. So I'm not saying how to do it. I'm just saying that we need to be mindful, especially I would think for our seniors who've had goodness, a year of being home. And, I'm certain that you're all considering that as you're going along, but we do want our kids, happy and healthy, socially, emotionally, and, certainly prepared to take on the rigors of what they do post-secondary wise.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Judy, I can just reflect that, in all of the conversation and observations I've had with our faculty and our students, I have to say, I think our students have, I know it's a struggle. This is a tough year. I think a lot of our students have really risen to the challenge. Our teachers, constantly are a source of amazement for me. And that, I think what you described is that so many of our students returning to RAM after being in college for a year or two reflect on how well prepared they are, particularly, compared against their college peers from other areas. And I know where that comes from. It comes from the focus of our students. It comes from our outstanding teachers that who put so much emphasis and weight on demanding a great deal from our students and expecting a great deal of rigor. I'm finding now that when I talk to the teachers, that fire is still burning, and our teachers are still, that's what they're thinking. I think that, as Penny mentioned, the RHAM staff in investigating and being trained in some of those social and emotional strategies that you can apply to support your students a few years ago has really paid off amazingly well now that we're in this such difficult time. In that, I think our teachers have really found, and I think for a lot of students, they've been able to implement kind of that perfect balance in a very difficult time of keeping the rigor, keeping focused on the rigor while also providing the support. The fact that our teachers are still, mindful and thinking so much about making sure that what they're teaching is of value and rigorous, while at the same time, having a big heart and wanting to make sure they're doing right by our students. And, it has different impact on different students. And I know that, really when we're back in the building, I think it's going to be so much easier to make that happen for more and more of our students. But I have to say that I think our staff has really attempted to find that balance to support our students' intellectual growth while at the same time really being mindful for making sure that they're okay.
And Scott, I want to be clear. I am not saying otherwise, but what I am saying is that, it's something to be aware of. And that the warmly demanding teachers have always, the research is clear, have the ones who've connected with kids have always made the greatest strides with kids around academic achievement. So it's certainly necessary, but we just, people who have kids in college right now, and it's pretty rigorous, are just saying we want to make sure that there isn't that stress, because that would be unkind to send someone ill prepared. And I'm certainly never saying that would happen in the RHAM community, but I'm saying there's a lot to balance. And I think it's part of why there's the conversation. And I think it's also part of why we need excellent teachers and human beings to decide this, and why machines can't do this, because sometimes it's just a conversation. And I think, Scott, because I've written you letters and staff letters of how appreciative I've been about the kindness and graciousness of staff and still really extending learning. And I haven't heard anybody say that, but I just want to say, when we're saying social emotional, it's moving students forward and educating them, that piece is certainly there.
Yep.
And I would just echo, Judy, that the research shows very clearly that when you are meeting the SEL needs of students, their academics automatically are increased. Their academic outcomes automatically increase just because of the obviously the environment in which it allows for them to achieve at a higher level. But I would also say, to your point, that a couple other things to think about is our seniors have had 2.5 years previous to COVID of a rigorous experience. And, certainly I know going into this year, one of the things that our teachers were concerned about in terms of what happened last spring is that they didn't want to lose the rigor, because that is so important for our students. And it is something that we are very proud of here at RHAM and know helps our students to succeed in college. And so, as I said before, it's a delicate balance, but one I think our teachers have been very successful at, which is a very hard thing to do. So I commend them for that, because they're constantly grappling with that very question on a daily basis. And the things that I still see them doing in the classroom with the students, does show that they are still holding that bar very high. And I'm sure Dana and any other student, if you ask them, would say that, you know, there are days where they feel like the rigor is too much, and there's days where maybe, you know, it's not. But, you know, again, it's the overall balance that we're trying to find. And hopefully our students who are in the younger grades are going to, you know, see the rigor even pick up more as we move forward. And also our students who are going to be leaving us at the end of this year, I can probably say for certain, and Mr. Leslie, you can chime in if you think I'm right or wrong, but colleges will be expecting our students to have perhaps maybe, you know, a few lacking skills here and there. However, I think that's more that maybe they didn't cover every content, you know, every unit in every course like they would have, but they're still going to be walking out with the skills that we've embedded across the years, you know, like writing and communication and organization and, you know, the things that are really going to carry them in college. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. If this went on for another couple of years, then I'd probably be worried, but I think right now we're still in decent shape.
So hi, this is Jean Wilson. If I could just chime in as a member of the higher ed community, I don't think the higher ed community is, you know, they're also dealing with this. They've been online, they're doing hybrid, they're all over the map, and they know what a struggle it is. So I can't imagine that they're not preparing for an incoming class that is really going to be marked by the COVID experience on a variety of levels, and they're going to be prepared for that. I work directly with faculty right now, and even now they've changed their style, maybe what they're doing, maybe they're dropping a lower quiz grade because they know how difficult this is, this whole situation. And so I just want to chime in from the higher ed side and say they're probably going to know this and be prepared for an incoming freshman class that isn't maybe like all the rest of them just from this experience, but they're also going through it. I just think we need to remember that.
So that's fair, certainly. And I think, Penny, I think we were saying many of the same things. And I think what maybe was missed with what I'm saying is maybe there need to be additional or different things than we've done because this is different than what we've done. I remember, let me give you a for instance, that was brilliant that RAM did for those kids who were advanced in math to really be prepared. Dr. Sarusi had them do some summer work, but it was fun or it was engaging. So I'm just saying that maybe there should be, we don't even know yet, but opportunities and things. And I have friends who do work with colleges as well, and they're starting to advertise some of that work that's going to be happening this summer. So I just want us to be aware of everything that's out there for our kids and to give our kids every competitive advantage they can have.
Great. Dana, did you have your hand up?
Yes, but I know I saw Lily put hers up first, so I'm going to let her jump in first.
There you go.
Thanks, Dana. So I know Ms. Bryskill touched on how on some days students might think the rigor is too much, and sometimes they might think that it's not as much. But honestly, for me, every day is too much. And I'm not even gonna lie to you when I say that. I get up, I do school, I have I give myself 45 minutes to have lunch or whatever, and then I'm back doing homework for several hours of the day. And I honestly don't think that's fair. And I don't think I'm the only one. And I am sort of in an awkward situation because I do take AP classes, and with those classes you can't really slow down the rigor just because of the AP exam, but I still I'm not having any time to myself, and I'm not putting in as much for my work because I do want to have time to sit down, to relax, to do whatever I need to do just to sort of get away from school. And at times I feel like I can't even get away from school because I go through the week. I have Saturday where I do whatever, and then Sunday I'm back doing my homework again for Monday the next day. And I don't think that's fair. And I think we're overlooking the fact that by having a lot of like rigor and work, we're decreasing everyone's mental health. And in that way, people might be missing assignments or not doing them or not putting in effort. And therefore, too much rigor ends up just deteriorating everyone's performance in school. And I think we have to really like think about that. And I know I totally acknowledge that we're supposed to be focusing on like preparing kids for college and making sure that college is not like a major challenge for them and, you know, sort of preparing them like that. But this, let me tell you, is a 1 in a million situation. And so I think we have to treat it as such. So yeah, I think that's all. Dana, I'll hand it off to you.
Anybody want to respond to that before I ask my question?
I just wanted to say that was very well said, and I think it really does echo what I've heard from students throughout the year. So that's not lost on me for sure.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to ask, one of my questions, are we using the terms mental health and social and emotional learning and like social and emotional health interchangeably?
I don't think so, Dana. I think that, you know, when we're looking at mental health, we're looking at, you know, the how healthy are our students. It's not how well adjusted necessarily they may be, but, you know, where social emotional learning is to provide skills that help us to, you know, maybe better cope with things. Whereas, you know, and that's kind of dealing with the typical stressors that one comes across. Whereas I think when we're looking at mental health now, we're really looking at kind of like, as Lily said, kind of a 1 in a million situation that is a bit more unique than simply expressing some social emotional skills. And yeah, so I know that, for example, our counselors are certainly looking for things that that go beyond just simply providing social emotional skills and things like that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure about that because I know sometimes the way our conversations are worded, it does seem like that to me as well as I think some other people. And I'm glad that that's not what we're trying to do, because if that is what we are doing, it does just promote the stigma that mental health is a bad word or something we shouldn't really be talking about. And then I'd also like to briefly touch on, I know someone brought up teachers. I don't remember who it was. We talked about that for a hot second there. I think students are really encouraged to go to teachers and to go turn to your trusted adult or someone in the building who you feel comfortable with. I don't know if teachers are properly equipped to handle all the situations that are thrown at them. I'm not sure how plausible it is to have more training for teachers in some more serious aspects of mental health. I think that would be really beneficial. I know someone said something about the mood ruler. If I'm being blunt, that seems very elementary level to me, considering the real struggles that a lot of us are going through, especially considering what we have going on in the world right now. I don't know if I don't think we have room in the schedule to do it necessarily right now. But I think teachers should be provided with more resources regarding not only social and emotional learning, but also mental health problems that don't necessarily show just the good side. I think we need to seriously show that this isn't pretty, it's not cute. And I think teachers need to have that information because they are put in those situations. And if they don't know how to handle them, that just takes a toll on their general well-being as well, which isn't really fair, considering that students are constantly considered to go to them. So I just think providing teachers with more resources in general would have a domino effect and really benefit everybody.
Dana, I think you actually provided us with a perfect segue to, I think, go to Tressa in that, you know, one of the things that HM has been really so helpful for us with is just doing some of the exact same things that you've just talked about, not only in terms of providing some of those skills for our teachers, but also providing some of the support for our teachers. Because, you know, I think we, like you said, it's a challenging time to be a teacher anyway. It's always challenging to be a teacher. Now, you know, it's challenged, cubed. Add to that the fact that now you're hearing these real struggles that, we're always accustomed to supporting our students, but we're not always accustomed to, the degree of challenge that we're all facing. And so, Tressa, I'm setting you up here. So, but I think AHM has really been a blessing for us in terms of helping us navigate some of those wild streams. So.
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. Just listening to everyone, I wish I had the answers. I do. And this is so hard because I know in talking with students and families through our clinical program and touching base with our school-based staff and talking with teachers, we all want to do the right thing. But it's hard not knowing exactly on a scale where so many students and families are struggling with mental health to know exactly what the answer is. So I know at AHM, what we've been trying our best to do is just try things and support where we can. But our biggest goal is to just create connections and making sure that students and family have people that they can reach out to and have a support system built. So I'm going to kind of go through ways that, AHM has been doing what we feel in the moment is helpful. First, with our families, AHM, we have our clinical program, and we have seen a huge increase in our clinical or outpatient program. And these are, high risk students to, very high functioning students at our schools that now, because of COVID, are experiencing increased depression and anxiety and just need someone to talk to. So, we did in COVID put all of our clinical clients on a telehealth platform, which was great because we could have that happen, in a space where they didn't have to worry about transportation, or if they were suffering from illness within their home, they could still make those appointments. Because of the increase, we are adding therapists. We are seeking grants and additional funding so we can expand the program. And we know that this is not a short-term fix. We know that we are going to have to sustain this increase in clinical support probably for the next few years. But we are ready to take on that challenge, and we're going to do what we can do to find the funding to do that. We do have our school-based staff, at RHAM in the middle school, at the high school. They continue to talk to students about their needs, seeing them one-on-one in small groups, talking to them about time management, anxiety and depression, just learning and managing the new schedules that are being thrown at them. Many of the skills that we have taught our students in person, as far as time management, those things that they were being reminded of constantly in person, unfortunately, when we've taken them out of their regular surroundings, have kind of been forgotten. And it's very hard sometimes to apply the skills that you've learned in school to now in a remote situation. And so we're really trying to help our students chunk assignments out into small doses, and helping them feel accomplished. Sometimes students, when they fall behind, feel very discouraged and feel that they have this huge mountain to climb. So we've been talking to students and families about helping your kids kind of break their to-do list down in chunks. So just things like that, we've been really trying to help parents and families out. We did start our Health Matters program. That is a program that's open to anyone in the community. We were on a virtual platform for a while, and then after the holidays, we decided to make those supports on demand on our website. So videos around yoga, art, nutrition, managing stress, managing distant learning. Those are all resources we felt really important to put up for the public to access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've also created a page devoted to mental health. So again, just trying to support our community in as many different modalities as we can, especially for students and families. I know, Dana, you had mentioned that students are struggling with staying focused, finding it sometimes hard to prepare, maybe having a lack of motivation. Those are all things that we are hearing through our in-school counseling sessions as well as our clinical outpatient program. As far as the RHAM faculty goes, you know, myself and our clinical director, Megan Aldridge, has been working with the admin team at RHAM. And I have to say, I feel a great honor to be able to work with the RHAM faculty. A couple weeks ago, Megan and I put together professional development sessions, one on how to help students during COVID, and one, how we can support teachers during COVID. And I was very pleased that we had 120 plus teachers attend those sessions, I think is the majority of the teaching faculty. And we learned so much. We learned so much during those sessions. One of the things that was very clear to Megan and I was that the RHAM faculty care so much about the students and families. And that was something that at times was very emotional for the RHAM faculty to even discuss. We knew that it is hard for the RHAM teachers to shift and to prepare and to teach in this new space. But even more, what is weighing heavy on their hearts is the well-being of the RHAM students. And that came through very clear, because they do truly feel that they want to help every student. And sometimes that is hard when you're teaching virtually and not able to reach your students like you regularly would in the classroom setting. And so when you're doing this for so many months, and at times maybe questioning, if students are safe, how they're doing, it takes a toll on you mentally. And so when we brought up the the state that the teachers are in, which is called compassion fatigue, this light bulb went off, and a lot of the teachers were like, yes, that is what we're feeling. And in a nutshell, compassion fatigue is when you care for others so deeply for a long period of time, and maybe you're not totally sure if you're making a difference. Sometimes you might feel guilty. Sometimes you might feel defeated. But you're on all of the time. That is kind of where our teachers are at right now. And I think for them, just putting a name on what they're feeling and telling them how they really are making a difference and how important their connections to their students are made a big difference. So that is why we are going to continue to work with the RHAM administration to offer maybe some counseling for teachers throughout the week. Having an AHM counselor there, so if they do need to talk, they can have that space, as well as that Zen room that Penny talked about. When we asked the teachers if that was something that they would utilize, they were very in favor for that, just to have a space where they can go reflect and then go back into class and be ready for their next students. So that's where our teachers are. So what we're trying to do at AHM, again, we don't have the answers, but what we do want to do is support students and families, and at the same time, continue to support faculty. We know that everyone is struggling with feelings of anxiety, depression, exhaustion. We want to be, as helpful as we can in promoting mental health awareness and really supporting our community. We do know the importance, though, of connections, making those trusted adults, connections with students, giving connections from adult to other adults that they can confide in and have that positive support. So right now it is really all about having support and connections. I do think though, if I can project maybe 2 years down the road, I do feel that our students and our families are going to be stronger in ways that we've probably never seen, because now we're going to have groups of youth going through a pandemic. And I do feel that, although they might be missing on some of the skills that they would have in a regular year, they're also gaining some skills that probably they never would have if it wasn't for this experience. They're going to be extremely resilient, and I think they're going to gain some skills around independence and how to work independently and how to work online and remotely. Those are all skills that we've all developed really quickly and probably never would have if it wasn't for this experience. And I think also many of our students and probably our teachers are not going to take the in-person learning model for granted. They're going to appreciate it so much more when this is all said and done. So yeah, if you all have any questions, AHM, again, we are just continuing to, try new things, look at new ways that we can support, look for funding in ways that we can expand upon the programs that we know are needed, but do that in a place of honor and gratitude, because we really are so grateful for what everybody's doing at RHAM.
Thank you, Tressa.
And Tressa, I think our community is just incredibly fortunate to have you at AHM to support us all year after year. It's not just this year, but it's been for many, many years and many to come. And we're really grateful for all the wonderful work you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
And just to point out that it's not just at these events that we communicate. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with AHM and RHAM staff to continue this conversation. And so, we meet regularly. It's a process for us. It's a journey. I think, as Tressa, you said it so well, we wish we had the answers. We don't all have the answers right now, but we're certainly all moving, want to move in that direction. And so we're really talking weekly to enhance what we're doing and hopefully hear the challenges that our students and families are having, and so that we can move and address, begin to address those.
Does anybody have any questions for Tressa? Okay, thank you for joining us, Tressa, this evening. It was wonderful to have you. I think we're ready to move on to public comments. Any public comments? I'm not hearing any at this time. So we go ahead.
Hi, I'm Reese. I'm a senior at RHAM High School, and I'm currently working on a resource packet. I just have a few questions on how we're dealing with mental health. I feel like sometimes we're avoiding the topic a little bit, like of the dark, and more than just depression and anxiety. There's a lot of other stuff kids are struggling with, and I just want the school to know that it's a lot bigger than it seems in the school, and a lot of kids have a lot of concerns about the way mental health is being dealt, and I just wanted to bring attention to that.
Thank you, Reese.
Stephanie, can she expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Reese, would you like to expand on that?
Sure. I'm a really big mental health advocate, and I think it's really important to talk about the dark side of mental health as long as you talk about the good parts of it too. Not that there's any great parts, but you have to talk about the dark parts of it, and it's more than just being sad and feeling lonely, and sometimes kids feel really trapped under the pressures of school. And I think it's really important that we talk about more than just how the pandemic affects kids, but how just in general, mental health affects kids even without the pandemic, because a lot of kids can feel trapped even without the pandemic or before this even happened.
Thank you. That was helpful. And Reese, I remember you from being with Mackenzie at all of those football games when you were little. So that's why I wanted to hear what you meant with that. Thank you.
Are there any more public comments?
Just to go off what Reese said a little bit, I think she's totally on point when she says that we're avoiding mental health, because I think that like the virtual kindness wall and like the calming rooms on like the guidance website, those are great and all, but I think we are avoiding the source of the problem. And those things are great, but they're not going to pull someone out of a like depressive episode, quite frankly. And I think what will do the best for students is like really focusing on workload, just like the real aspects of school, like not dancing around it with other programs that seem like they would be enough, because honestly they're not. And I don't mean, I'm not saying that to criticize you or anything like that. I'm not saying that to like be rude or anything, but I just want to be honest with you in saying that the way it seems like we're handling things with you know, the things that Ms. Breisbull had pointed out that we're doing, just sort of like virtual, I don't think that's targeting students mental health as much as it should, and as much as we, you know, as much as we need it and as much as we want it to. So thank you.
Can Stephanie, since they're student reps and we're on the board, can we ask for clarification?
Yeah, I think you can ask for clarification.
So Lily, do concrete things help, like Tressa said, to break down assignments or to work with teachers to kind of prioritize maybe what should get done, or if you're not going to do something, what that would be? Do those things help, or are they just fluff too?
I think I mean, I'm just speaking for myself here. I think they do help. You know, with larger projects, breaking them down, like I'm in AP Lang right now, and we're doing a big research project, and my teacher is breaking it down step by step. Like we're doing our annotated bibliography this week, and we're doing our author's biography next week, and each are assigned different points. So we're doing it step by step, but we're also getting the job done at the same time. We're not dumbing it down necessarily.
Right.
And I do acknowledge that it's harder for the AP curriculum because you need to jam all that in before the AP test. But at the same time, I think that, you know, academic performance and social emotional health plays off each other in many ways. Like if a kid is very depressed because of how much schoolwork they're getting, they're not gonna want to do it, and that is gonna bring down their grades. They're gonna be less encouraged, and they're not gonna be getting as much of an education. So in that way, how can we give kids a ton of rigor in school if we know that it's not going to help them in the long run, because it'll affect their social, emotional, you know, health in such a astronomical way?
So thank you, and that was helpful to me. And I'm just going to say something back. You and Dana, I appreciate, really make me think. And one of you asked an excellent question: do we interchangeably use mental health and SEL? And I agree with Mr. Leslie. No, not really, but at times maybe that does happen a little. And I think, and this is me, but I'm an educator too, I think that rigor sometimes gets used that way too, because I think, when, just to be clear to everybody, my definition of rigor is, something fascinating and challenging that kids are engaged in, but it would not be overwhelming. That's not my definition, is not daunting or overwhelming. It's just something where there would be that guidance to walk through it and to do it. So I just share that sometimes when we use words, as you guys or as you pointed out, that we might be seeing different things.
I also just want to add, I know Lily just brought up the programs that are in place, saying they don't really do much. There are times when they do come off as, I don't know if belittling is the word I want to use, but they seem to downplay some really serious issues. And Reese did bring it up. These are not pretty issues. They're not things that we want to talk about. They are ugly. They are not fun, but we do need to talk about them. And I do think sometimes the programs that we have in place downplay them and try to make them more kid friendly. But the reality is we have the middle school is like 12 and 13-year-olds to 18-year-olds in the building. I don't know how much the middle schoolers can necessarily handle getting fully in depth, but once you get to the high school, there are real levels that really need to be discussed. And I think that is one thing we really do need to work on, and getting into the actual depth of what mental health really is. And I don't think that's something we've fully addressed. I think it's been brought up a few times, but I know I, as a student, would really like to see that happen more, because I am concerned for students once I'm not here, for what's going to happen over the next few years, especially after this. I don't know if this is going to make students stronger in the way we think it is. So I do think that is one of my biggest concerns.
Dana, Lily, Reese, are there models anywhere that you are seeing, whether in this nation or other nations, that you think are worth emulating? Are you seeing anything that you've noticed and you've said, wow, that really gets to the root of it, or people feel heard, or they're able to move forward? Or is that something still to be researched? I mean, I've been looking for that and I haven't found what I think is the perfect thing yet.
I don't know if there's anywhere that I know of that is doing a good job with it, or a good enough job with it. I think there's places that are certainly trying, but I don't know if there's anywhere that's doing what needs to be done. I also don't want to say that there's going to be any solid stopping point. I don't think it's something that should be a stopping point. I don't want to be able to say, oh, this school is doing it right, they should stop expanding here. That's not what I think it should be. I think it's a constant process. So I don't have an answer. I wish I did. I think we just need more open communication about it, because it is a real problem.
I only ask that as kind of a starting point. Like, Reese has resources. I would love to see what she has as resources.
Okay. Kim Kane, you have your hand raised for public comment.
Hi, yeah, this is actually Kim's husband.
Okay. Hi, Tim.
I don't have my own computer, sorry. This has been an incredible night. What we're dealing with here is really unique, because you have, the students are going through, and I'm a parent, something that none of us can ever imagine. And that stress is also felt by the teachers and the administrators as well. It also puts them both under pressure for students to accomplish what they want to in school, and for teachers to make sure they're doing their job. The key to the administration and the board is to make sure you put both of those people, students and teachers, in a position where they can succeed and do it safely. I really don't relish your position at all, because I don't think we're done with this disease. I really don't think it's going to be done. I'm glad that the teachers and administrators get to have their vaccines. You have no idea how happy I am about that. But I think everyone needs to realize that you have to balance the needs, the mental health needs of the students and the teachers, versus the safety of the students and the teachers. So I applaud all you guys for putting in the effort. I really understand how hard, especially the administration, you guys I know you're working hard, but please keep that in mind, because my fear is that there's going to be another surge, or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to be faced with maybe doing a scaling back And I think that would be even more detrimental to the mental health of the students and the teachers than what they've already gone through. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, I'm hearing none at this time.
Someone just raised their hand. I think.
I want to
Judy?
talk after. No,
Okay.
I just want to say I really appreciate, especially people who have shared things that maybe are somewhat painful or dark or challenging. I think it's the only way that we can really understand or go forward. And you know, I would love to hear more myself from the students, and especially, you know, and I think I understood what they're saying, especially maybe things that seem like they can be helpful if there are any models or things they're interested in, and additionally those things that maybe don't seem so helpful. I understand they might help other people, but whoever said, I think some of the adults said, we've never faced anything like this. And we don't know. Maybe people will be more resilient. Maybe they won't. We just don't know. So I think the more we can try to listen, and thank you, especially Reese, Dana, and Lily for showing up at another night and sharing this with us. I mean, I think I have more questions than anything right now, but that's okay. Questions aren't bad.
Thank you, Judy. Any other comments?
I think Kelly Granitek has had her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see everybody. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, the hand came down and I don't know, maybe not.
I'm looking for hands in the list. Any other public comments? Okay, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Kathleen. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Before we second that, are we, Stephanie, are we committing to do anything further with this?
We can.
Okay, I mean, it just feels like, and I'm sorry, I'm tired. I had a long day too. It just feels like there was a lot of emotion and things shared. And, you know, maybe we could at least explore that. You and Scott did a great job, I think, in setting this up kind of quickly. So, I mean, if we as a board could kind of task you and Scott with, you know, helping us determine next steps, consulting with the other administrators and, you know, everybody, the students, parents, and maybe discuss next steps. It's
my hope, Judy, that with the full return, that will help the situation, and maybe we can revisit it after the full return has some time to do its magic a little bit, and see how things are going. Does that sound like a plan?
Is something, I mean, can we find out, I don't know if it's Tressa or if it's Penny, I know she has a doctorate in SEL kinds of things. Is there a way that we can find out what some of the best thinking or models are at this point? Can someone get some of that research for us, Scott, and send that to us?
Absolutely, Judy, and that's what kind of we're doing on a daily basis as we work with HM and work with, you know, our teachers and administrative team. We can certainly, you know, keep the board informed in terms of what we're doing.
That would be good. And I mean, I've been trying to stay abreast of things, but things are happening kind of quickly, I think. And not quickly, but I think they've been building, but some programs are being implemented more now.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I apologize, Stephanie. It just felt like an abrupt ending.
Okay.
I'll second it, Kathleen. I'll second the closure of the meeting.
Any discussion?
I was,
Oh.
Stephanie, I was just saying, what Judy was saying, but I was waiting for the discussion piece. I know that Scott and Penny and any of the administrators around here listening. And I know that they're going to be, thinking about and responding how to support the students, not just when they return, but over the summer and then in the fall. And I would love to hear some other ideas for programming. One size does not fit all, and I know that the administration knows that. So I was really happy to hear from the students. I think that's most important, and I appreciate them stepping forward and having the not just the I don't know what I want to say, but I appreciate them coming forward and sharing and trying to give us an idea of the representation of the student body. I want to thank the administration for being so open and allowing this to happen. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor for adjournment?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned at 9:17 p.m. Thank you, everybody.